Hey, Allie,
Hey?
did you know that mountain goats are actually more related to antelopes than goats, despite being called goats?
No, I didn't know that.
And another animal in the same region, the prairie dog, much lower elevation, same region, but prairie dogs have their own like language that they communicate in. It's almost like a certain frequency that they talk in.
Uh-huh.
It's super cool. Like they have their own little thing going on.
Interesting. I have heard that like goats can do that, or like they have
Hmm.
like each of their syllables is like has an accent. And
Yeah.
I was like, so that's funny that they have both an accent and a language.
Yeah, they like have their own language they can communicate between each other. It's like they have their own like group chat, like
I
without us.
want to be in the goat group chat. Come on.
Yeah, include us next time. That's so hateful of you. That's so rude.
Discriminatory.
Yeah, what the heck? Well, hey guys, I'm Alexis,
And I'm Allison.
and we are back here at Green Thread. Today we're here to talk about biodiversity. I mentioned if you watched visually, you would have just heard my spiel about mountain goats and prairie dogs. If you're listening audibly, you're about to hear about it. So, mountain goats and prairie dogs, they live out west, and I know I talk about Wyoming a lot, but I had a great experience out there and learned a lot. So they in Wyoming, they have a pretty wide range of animals that live out there. Because of the elevation changes.
Right.
So it's almost like the elevation differences are their own ecosystems on their own depending on elevation. Like above a certain amount of feet in elevation, you only have mountain goats and birds and
Mm-hmm.
different, just very few animals. And then as you go down, but each level is different and it's fascinating. But they're all in the same region of the world, all in the same state, in the same country, in the same on the same mountain, even if something's just living on the bottom versus the top.
Yeah.
And I got to kind of see that firsthand, which was awesome. But the fact that animals can have such a wide range and it can be so diverse, biodiverse, in one region is really, really cool. Even like ants are so small, yet they play their own role in the same ecosystem as a hawk or something huge, an elephant.
Yeah, yeah. I know. And like we talk about biodiversity, but like what is biodiversity?
Hmm.
We like to kind of dumb it down to just basically all of these different kinds of living things in one area. So it's very inclusive to like
Hmm.
everything in an environment.
Yeah.
Um which it's really important to have biodiversity for many different reasons, but predominantly for like ecosystem resilience, for like food webs, and which if you don't know what food webs is, it's just like the order in which like food goes up and down the food chain, like from predator to prey, and down below that like consumers and producers. But it's just everything plays an ecological role, and
Hmm.
they're all really important and vital, and in that is biodiversity.
Hmm.
But I know there's like a few different like ways that people don't realize that they can support biodiversity from even like their hometown, which is through like farmers markets
Yeah.
and like any other area around you who produces food or some sort of produce in general. They're having their own little
Hmm.
area that you can support biodiversity through them.
Yeah, and even just looking out for your local wildlife. I know we've talked a little bit before about native plants versus invasive, and just you can plant native plants in your area and help your local wildlife, your local pollinators flourish. But that kind of applies to everything, just helping any type of local wildlife you can. If you find a bird's nest that's on the ground or something, or if you just find any injured local animal, that's a special case, but you can call DNR in your area. At least in Georgia, we have the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and they have a wildlife division that helps with things like that. But just staying informed as well. I know we talk about that almost every episode, but it's a big part of it. It's a huge part of just caring about the environment and making sure that you're doing the best thing you can possible. So, just doing a little bit of research about the animals and the wildlife in your area can help educate you on how to help biodiversity wherever you are.
Exactly. And you can like support wildlife through having habitats with native plants, which you talked about
Mhm.
in a previous episode. So just doing like your research on how you can support them. Also, just consuming less. I think a
Yeah.
big part of like we would talk about overconsumption.
Hmm.
All of it just ties together.
It does. It does.
But just so many different things to act on our food web in a way of like our little tiny efforts all the way to the largest efforts. I know back to like when we were talking about native plants in that previous episode, a big thing with them and tying into biodiversity is that they provide resources for many different things, not just pollinators, which we were mostly focused on, but they also are good for like soils and making sure that, you know, because they are like native grown, so they are more resilient to like climate changes and environmental impacts in specific regions. They're also a lot less maintenance, they require a lot less like pesticides, going back to the lawns.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't really know what native plants that you have near your region, you can always like go to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service page, and they'll have like a whole list based on the region that you live in, and you can kind of just pick and choose which ones you would like to plant or to have, and that's just like a greener thread you pulled on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, even outside of your local community, outside of Georgia, just the entire world, the biodiversity of the world is kind of the bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture to think about as well, just with how our local wildlife ties into the world's biodiversity. And in some of my previous classes, we've talked about biodiversity, and it's kind of sad, you know, here's a doom and gloom sentence for the episode, but we've lost, I mean, a whopping percentage of our biodiversity. Like the world is not ever going to be as biodiverse as it once was, which at least in our lifetime or in the near
Yeah.
future, which is really upsetting and it's horrible. But like I've said in the last couple of episodes, we're in the Anthropocene, we're focused on humans a lot, but focusing on biodiversity is extremely important because of things like keystone species. I know we've also mentioned that, but everything is so intricately and purposefully like designed to work together in an environment, and when one of those things gets thrown off, it can throw off the whole rest of it, the whole rest of the world. It can throw us off. That can affect food production, that can affect how we get many of our products, and that would, you know, as it was become a problem to humans, then people would start to pay attention to that more. But yeah, it's devastating to think about the biodiversity loss that we've had, but as we've also talked about in recent episodes about endangered species and bringing that back, we're
Mm-hmm.
slowly trying to make up for the damage that we've done. So yeah, just staying informed and doing the best that you can and thinking about how you can help that big picture is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a step in
Hmm.
like the very slow process that it is, especially when we've changed our environment at such a rapid pace at a very
Hmm.
short amount of time. I mean, as much as nature will always find its way back, like it does take time,
Hmm.
and we sometimes, I think I'm also guilty of it, of like just not processing time at the same um intensity as what it really is,
Hmm.
and thinking like in the next couple years like trying to fix things by then, when in reality that's like a split second in the span of how long all these species have been here or will continue to be here.
Hmm.
um Going back to what you were saying of like you know, just being informed and kind of like backing up on your impact by not meddling with too much of biodiversity, but like that's just lowering your carbon footprint. I know whenever we go out like camping or even just hiking, like, you know, leave the trail how it is, leave
Hmm.
the animals how they are. Don't take what you don't need, and you
Hmm.
don't need what you think you need.
Yeah.
And also advocating for, like we were talking about greener spaces, but going along with that is like green walls
Hmm.
and you know, bringing biodiversity in to like bigger cities and places that are more human dominant.
Hmm.
That's really important as well, because it's almost like we're already fragmenting habitats,
Hmm.
and the best way to kind of bridge or like make wildlife corridors is by having a little, like, I almost think of like jumping on rocks
Yeah.
through the river and like using that as a way to connect everything together. And hopefully that's, you know, another way we can kind of speed up the process of, you know, helping these species, you know, continue to thrive and grow in their environment.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to focus on another bigger picture thing, but also we could help with is laws that concern conserving and preserving species and natural areas. So that way we don't have any more endangered species, so that way we don't have any more biodiversity loss, because it's only, what are we going to do from here? It's looking really questionable right now in the environmental field, just looking at the future. It's scary, it's depressing at times, it's hard, but I do have hope because of people like us who want to do this and other people in the field that want to save our planet for the future. Uh, but it's it's tough sometimes. But if we can focus on solutions and get higher powers to approve these solutions and to be a part of the movement, then that's another way that we can help save biodiversity.
Absolutely. Political action is a lot more forceful than we think it is,
Mm-hmm.
even though it is also a slow process. But I also have seen where it can make extreme, improvements in a shorter time than if we were to just start talking about the subject. So I think it's really important to figure out who we want to represent, not only us as people and our social realm, but also as a whole and as like the planet and climate. And we've talked about it many times. We have a whole reel on our Instagram about it, of just making sure that we are voting, not even just for like presidents, but also for like our local Senate and anything that you might not know much about as far as like your local government. They're also big impactors on specific situations like this with climate and environmental biodiversity.
For sure. And even on the state level,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very big factor. Like I was saying earlier, Georgia DNR, Georgia has their own Department of Natural Resources. So at that point, that is on the state level. So we have to look at who is representing us as an entire state. And it's funny with Georgia, we have so much biodiversity because we have so many different types of environments. We have the mountains towards the top. South Georgia is swampy and
Yep.
beachy and coastal, and then we've got the middle, we've got plains and hills, and I mean, we've got it all. And it's hard to protect all of that under one general law or general act or statement, even because there's all these different environments and different species have different needs that we need to protect. So just advocating for specificity on those animals, those wildlife, is really important for a state like Georgia and for the whole country, even because the United States is truly a biodiverse place across the entire country.
I agree. I mean, I don't think that we want to go to the West Coast to look at the things we see in our backyard.
Yeah.
We go there to look for, you know, things we don't see on a normal basis. I mean,
Hmm.
we see squirrels
Oh
everywhere.
yeah.
We see rabbits everywhere, and I wouldn't go to Maine to see a
Yeah.
squirrel.
Yeah.
Um so but at the same time, it is also a possibility that you won't be able to say that you can go somewhere to see
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
And so that's what we're trying to ultimately like get people to focus on, is that we've taken these things for granted.
Hmm.
And in order for us to continue having the privilege of being able to experience, seeing things and seeing states that have all these different types of geographic differences, that's a privilege,
Very
and
much so.
we
Hmm.
can't forget that.
Absolutely. We have to remember our privileges in that, and that's all the more fuel to the fire to keep up the fight for advocating for biodiversity, advocating for protection for the environment.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Even though the conversation's ended here, it doesn't have to. So keep listening in, keep interacting with our content, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Keep pulling on the thread.